In 1973, a bank robbery took place in Stockholm, Sweden. The robber Jan-Erik Olsen took 4 bank employees hostage and held them captive for 6 days. During the ordeal, the hostages were subjected to physical and emotional abuse. Despite this, they surprisingly began to form a bond with their captor. They even went as far as defending him and refused to cooperate with the police. One of the hostages later explained that she had felt a strong connection to Olsen, the robber, whom she described as kind and protective during the ordeal. This phenomenon where hostages form a strong emotional bond with their captors, known as Stockholm Syndrome, is not unique alone to hostage situations. In fact, that is why I am making this episode, Understanding Trauma Bonding. Trauma bonding can occur in any situation where an individual experiences intense fear, stress, or trauma and forms a strong emotional connection with the abuser. If you are wondering why people remain in abusive and toxic relationships, I am going to quickly give you some psychological explanations for this. When people experience trauma, their body's stress response is activated, releasing stress hormones and adrenaline. This response prepares the body to either fight or flee from the danger. Let's say a young lady is in a romantic relationship with a guy who is emotionally and physically abusive. One evening, the guy becomes very angry and starts yelling at her. He grabs her arm, leaving a bruise. In this moment, the lady's body responds to the trauma by activating her stress response. Her heart rate increases and she feels a surge of adrenaline rush. Her brain goes into fight or flight mode, preparing her to either defend herself or flee from the danger. But because she has been in this situation many times before, she knows that fighting back or trying to leave will only escalate the situation, so she freezes, becoming passive and submissive. This response is often referred to as freeze or dissociation. In the days and weeks that follow, the lady may become hypervigilant, always being on the lookout for potential threats from the guy. She will start experiencing anxiety and fear even when he is not present. For some people, repeated exposure to trauma can lead to changes in their brain structure and function. The brain's reward system is also affected and sometimes releases feel-good hormones like dopamine that can create a sense of pleasure or euphoria in response to the traumatic stimuli. That is why you see someone who grew up in a household with an abusive father, constantly being exposed to emotional and physical abuse, starts to experience an exaggerated fear response, making him more prone to anxiety and hypervigilance. People who experience this kind of abuse usually struggle with anxiety and fear in their daily life. They have difficulty forming healthy relationships with others due to their exaggerated fear response. Trauma bonding often involves an intense attachment to the abuser. This attachment can be driven by a need for safety, protection, or comfort. The victim may feel a strong emotional connection to the abuser, which can be misrepresented or misinterpreted as love or loyalty. Most times, this attachment to the abuser is driven by a fear of abandonment. The victim is afraid that if the abuser leaves, she'll be alone, unprotected. Trauma bonding may also come from the need for emotional connection. The victim usually feels a strong emotional connection to the abuser, which is intensified by the highs and lows of the abusive relationship. This kind of attachment is not the same as healthy love or attachment because it is driven by fear, need, and trauma. Abusers often use psychological manipulations to create a trauma bond. This can include tactics like gaslighting, emotional blackmail, or playing on the victim's emotion. The abuser may also use rewards or punishment to control the victim's behavior. You hear them make manipulative statements like, I thought we were friends. I thought you were in love with me, but I guess I was wrong. Their manipulating tactics include guilt tripping, emotional blackmail, gaslighting, and sometimes they even play the victim. By using these emotional tactics, the abuser is able to manipulate the victims into feeling uncertain, anxious, and responsible for the abuse. These psychological mechanisms can contribute to development of trauma bonding. Now, what are some of these signs that we can identify in someone or in yourself that can tell you that you are experiencing trauma bonding? There is an intense emotional connection to the abuser despite the harm that they have caused. There is the fear of being abandoned or rejected by the abuser, even if it means staying in the toxic relationship. There's anxiety and hypervigilance, feeling constantly on the edge or anxious even when the abuser is not around. There's depression and hopelessness, feeling trapped, helpless, and hopeless with no way to escape the abusive situation. If you catch yourself defending the abuser or making excuses or justifying the abuser's behavior and actions, even when it's harmful or abusive. If you are struggling to set healthy boundaries or assert yourself in the relationship. If there is physical tension, pain, or numbness, especially in areas related to the trauma, like the neck, the shoulders, or the abdomen. If you are having difficulties sleeping at night or experiencing nightmares, flashbacks, or other sleep-related problems. If you find yourself engaging in self-criticism, self-blame, or negative self-talk, especially in relation to the trauma. Breaking free from trauma bonding requires a thoughtful and supportive approach, and here are some steps that can help. Ensure physical safety. If you are in immediate danger, call for help. Go for therapy or counseling to address underlying issues and develop coping strategies. Join a support group, either online or in person, to connect with others who have experienced trauma bonding and broken free. Surround yourself with supportive, non-judgmental people who can provide emotional validation. Engage in activities that promote relaxation and stress reduction, such as exercise, meditation, or creative pursuits. Treat yourself with kindness, understanding, and patience just as you would to a close friend. Learn to set and maintain healthy boundaries with others, including the abuser. Reconnect with activities, hobbies, and values that bring you joy and fulfillment. Find meaning and direction in your life, separate from the trauma bonding experience. If recommended by a mental health professional, medication can help alleviate symptoms related to trauma bonding. Remember that healing is a process, and breaking free from trauma bonding takes time, patience, and support. Keep in mind that everyone experiences trauma bonding differently, and not everyone will exhibit all these signs. If you or someone you know is experiencing trauma bonding, it is essential to seek professional help from a therapist, a counselor, or a support group. Thank you for listening to this episode of Rants Unscripted. If you found this podcast valuable, please subscribe to my channel and share this episode with your friends and family. And I'll catch you again in the next episode. Cheers.